Hey y'all, how we doing? Shout out once again to Bear Nation for tuning in to another episode of the Bear Necessities podcast. I am your host, Rob Napoli. The Bear Necessities is a podcast where we sit down with entrepreneurs, ecosystem partners, and innovation folks to talk about what it takes and means to launch, create, and scale business across the world. We talk about the journey and the challenges of being entrepreneur-minded and how that translates into your journey, giving you the tools and knowledge to overcome challenges that you may be facing in your life's journey. The Bear Necessities is part of the Rise Up Media family, and we thank you for tuning in. Now, let's get into the show. If you hadn't already heard about it, or you don't already know, my new book, The Social Soul, How to Master Your Personal and Professional Brand with Intentionality and Authenticity is out now. You can find it on Barnes & Noble or Amazon. Go check it out, purchase a copy, let me know what you think, leave me a review. I appreciate y'all for the support. Can't wait to hear from you what stood out the most. Hey y'all, we are back once again for another episode of the Bear Necessities podcast. I am your host, Rob Napoli, and today we are sitting down with a founder who I have gotten to know over the last couple of years from Sweden, and not just from Sweden, from like the north of Sweden up in the EMEA region. He is the CEO and co-founder of a company called Hero Imaging, which is a startup specializing in medical image analysis software. His mission is to facilitate excellent science, making sure that anyone working in medical imaging research and development can focus resources on the science rather than crafting code and analysis pipelines. Simon, I'm excited to have you on the pod. Simon Lindgren is the co-founder and CEO. Say hello to Bear Nation for me, man.
Hi, Rob. Thanks for having me. Super excited, actually. I've been looking forward to this, and it's going to be nice to preach to the masses.
Oh, I love it and excited to have you on. You know, So I was reading your intro there. I was about to go on like another mini tangent, and I was like, I should probably introduce you first. So I've known Simon for a couple of years now. We met through Humanova Innovation. Humanova Innovation is a startup accelerator program / incubator for companies out of the EMEA region in Sweden, which I've done a lot of work with. Simon came through one of our half day group boot camps during the pandemic times, and stayed in touch with you as you've gone through your growth cycle, and we'll get to some of the stuff you're doing, including a rebrand and a new product launch, which are all things that entrepreneurs just do all the time. But to kind of scale this back to start off, you talked about your mission is to facilitate excellent science. You're a science guy, your background's all science. What made you say, kind of go down the path of maybe away from science into starting a company? Did that happen early in your career? Did that happen late? Like, what made you think, I want to start a company now?
Several things, actually, Rob. It's a good question because, our main product is something that's basically organically developed in a scientific setting. This is just a bunch of functions that we've coded as a group for specific tasks. But along the line, we've sort of started just thinking a bit further, trying to be a bit more systematic in our approach to how we conducted image analysis. Because just for anyone who's not familiar with this is something that most people do just by strictly coding. And it's not actually computer scientists doing the coding usually. It is mainly like physicists, chemists for that matter, who need to sort of harness the information from medical images for scientific purposes. But the thing is, they have to sort of start from scratch using one-off softwares that they sort of combine with their own code. So it's time-consuming, it's problematic. And the thing is, when we started to realize that we really had something that we could share with people, we started sharing it with people. It was very rudimentary at that point. You could sort of call it a full software, but we really didn't have a user interface in place. So after a while, we just started thinking that, this is something that we could do something really awesome with, basically, if we add on like something that's really intuitive. because that's always been the goal, to make this
Mhm.
something that everyone can use, something that's not only for, the specialists, but the entire research team should be
Yeah.
we should be able to add value across the board. That's the point. And I mean, starting a
Yeah.
company, I come from, I'm third generation entrepreneur. So, I mean, it wasn't that far fetched. And I think my
Yeah.
co-founders here are just as excited as me, because you sort of get to add value from another perspective. I mean, don't get me wrong. I love the scientific
Yeah.
world. You do really add value, although incrementally. With what we're doing right now, we get something more hands-on. We can
Mhm.
actually see how we're helping people, and we get new perspectives on how to keep adding value. So, I mean, that's really what it's all about.
Yeah.
It's very rewarding, I'd say.
I love that. And, prior to starting the company, you spent time in kind of as a financial controller, management consulting, had a lot of different things that you kind of like built a lot of these different skills of running projects, running teams, all these things. And then you met your kind of team and kind of created this product to make life easier. When you look at your co-founding team, because there's a few of you, when you started the company together, how did you sit down and kind of think about who was going to own what as it relates to running a company? Because this is always kind of the question I get is like, do you have one founder who like manages everything? If you have a partner, how do you manage that? If you have multiple co-founders, how do you kind of go about setting the stage to run a successful company? And was that a challenge? Did you have to have some hard conversations about who owned what as it related to building a business?
Yeah, I mean, of course. I mean, when you found something, you sort of have to put two things into perspective. What has everyone contributed with so far? And what is everyone going to contribute with? And I mean, this isn't set in stone. It's not for us, and I don't think it is for anyone. That, I mean, when you move from sort of having maybe like a prototype into actually turning it into a business, just having the product isn't enough. I mean, you still have so much work to do. So, I mean, this is something fluid, and you need to be able to sort of talk about everything, and you need to do it openly, I think, with your co-founding team. I think that's important. Just make sure everything's out there, that you actually discuss everything. And I mean, we've had it fairly easily, given that we're very good at disagreeing about everything. It's actually, I love that. I love that we don't always agree on stuff, because we really, that puts us at a point where we can really hash stuff out. But I mean, I don't want anyone to be fooled. There are going to be hard conversations along the way.
Yeah.
Of course.
Well, I think that's, that's kind of the key thing here. I tell, because my company Haptia Group, which was recently acquired, I started with a friend of mine, Phil DeVecchio. And one of the things that we did is we sat down and had a very in-depth, long conversation about how we expected this to work, kind of who owned what, where our areas, like what we brought to the table as far as areas of expertise. And, we had a lot of conversations, and I like how you said disagreements. And I posted a video the other day about how most times we shouldn't be looking for validation. We should be looking for opposition, right? Because it's within those opposition, when people disagree or have opposition to it, it means they're asking questions. But if they're asking questions or they're pushing back, it's usually because they're interested and they're trying to validate it themselves by asking hard questions. So if you want to be validated, and if you're looking for like, hey, yeah, this is great. Hey, Simon, you're doing an awesome job. You're amazing. You're the CEO. Like, if I never push back, it's like, Simon, I think we're making some bad decisions here. I think we need to do better with hiring here. Then how is the company going to move forward? So you need to have that opposition in order to have validation, not just from a product perspective, but I think from a team perspective. So I like how you brought that up. And I literally posted that video last week and had a conversation about it. I think it's such an important thing for us as entrepreneurs and us as business owners and us as managing teams. If you're really trying to scale a product, you need to look for people that are going to challenge you and push you and ask hard questions. Because everyone's gassing you up like, hey, this is amazing. Then like they don't really believe in it. They're just trying to be nice.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there's basically two aspects here. You basically need a team that complement each other, that actually have different skill sets, that add into a mix, that can really bring out something great. But actually disagreeing shows that there's some passion in there. People care about what you're doing. And I mean,
100%.
if everyone agrees, no one's going to be truly innovative. No one's
Right.
going to bring something new to the table if everyone at the table agrees all the time.
100p. I love it. So when you started, the company started as non-pi medical 4 years ago. And, your first product, your software suite was called the Mice Toolkit. How did you go about, I always love asking this question with companies, how did you go about naming the company, or what did the company name originally? Because, you've rebranded, and we'll talk about that, but how does a company come about a name? Like, I tell my story about where Rise Up came from, where the logo came from. Like, what did your company name originally come from when you think about the early days 4 or 5 years ago when this all got started?
It's actually a very fun question, because we sat down as a group and we discussed a bunch of possible names for the company. And the thing is, we came from a very organic development setting. So this is something, our product was a name that we never really questioned. We just chose sort of what seemed like a cool acronym at the time. And when it got down to actually registering the company, we had like a couple suggestions. And given that I only work with physicists, there were a lot of physics jokes in there. The thing is, we had like 20 suggestions rejected by the government agency who handles this in Sweden. And the thing is, when I talked to our contact person there, a person called Irene, she was just so rigid in how our name was one letter too similar to something that had been registered 30 years ago and it's now a passive company. So basically that inspired the name, which is no other name pleased Irene, medical.com. That was sort of what we were going with. Not many people know this story, actually. And I honestly don't think I've gotten the question like that before. So it's funny. But yeah, we're moving on from that. So non-pi is just going to be basically a parent company and holding ownership.
Yeah. Well, I always like asking, the question where a name comes from, or how people think about naming a company. You get all kinds of great answers. So I love that there's a story. There's always a story behind it usually. So I love it. And thanks for sharing. So as you work with a bunch of physicists, right? You have these talented, smart, research-focused co-founders. How have you all gone about really thinking about, because you're really focused on the business operations side, right? When we think about your business, there's the fact that you have to have a great product that can help do excellent science, but you also then have to sell it. So is it just you are focused on business ops? Like, how have you really, obviously I could see everyone wanting to focus on the product side. How have you been able to really think about, or as a team focus on, how do we scale the business once we have a product?
Well, it's been sort of natural for me to take the lead on everything that's related to business development, but I've tried to involve everyone in the process, partially because I want us to sing the same tone all the way. And I mean, it's a learning experience for everyone. I learn from them constantly. So it isn't, it's just natural to make sure that everyone's involved. And I want everyone involved in customer relationships as well. I mean, we have a lot of talent in the company. So it just makes sense that I want them to be visible in that. And that we sing the same tune when it comes to how we develop our business as well. So just try to get
that we had
at least in the ownership group.
Yeah. Well, I love that, because I know we had Patrick in the boot camp, and Patrick never really has done sales before, but he is a very natural seller, and he's done a great job at being able to be in front of a client, build relationships. I mean, he's a PhD, he's super smart and like loves the science of it, and I think he was even surprised going through this of just like his ability to connect and build rapport with customers and drive that conversation forward. So I thought that was a really cool thing to see, but also as a company, as the founders who understand when all the founders can sell, can share their story and kind of drip, it kind of drips off the tongue that what you're trying to do, the impact you're trying to create, the mission that you're going after, it makes a big difference in the scalability of the company, right? And the way that the company is seen and grows when everyone has the same kind of, we're all moving in the same direction.
Yeah, and I mean, it's interesting that you mention it. I agree completely because he's never worked in sales, but if you just look at his personal characteristics, he has everything he needs to be awesome at it. He is a very pleasant person. He's smart. He can read the room, and he's never pushy. He never would be pushy. And the thing for him was just to get him to realize that he's working partially with selling something that he himself thinks is fantastic. You have to remember that. I mean, you're not exaggerating if you propose to a customer that we're here to add value to what you do. We're here to help you. I mean, it's just sincerity.
Yeah.
But it's kind of awesome to see. And you get a lot of confidence for a person that also knows the science behind it.
Exactly.
Awesome.
And I think, I've worked in sales my whole life, and I know a lot of salespeople, and, I know a lot of people that sell products and services that they think are cool, but they don't care about the same way a founder does. So when you see somebody who cares about the product and the impact the product can make, that sincerity really comes through. And so I think that's really cool. So I know that you're going through a rebrand, which has not been without its challenges. So as you've been, Non-Pi Medical is the holding company, Hero Imaging is coming into center stage. What encouraged that coming out of let's rebrand, let's kind of call it Hero Imaging, and how has that process been from kind of thinking about to rebrand to a whole new kind of product, so to speak, same product, but putting a better wrapper and whatnot. So what kind of pushed that, and what were some of the challenges you've been facing as you've gone through the rebrand process?
Well, first off, this has been a long process. We started like a year ago, and it's all been about trying to identify where our natural place in the market is. Who do we want to be? And how do we portray that in a way that people can relate to? So basically, we've done this from bare bone keywords workshopping through everything we do, why we do it. And it's been a lot of the work has been about like seeing what our mission is, what's important to us, what are our key values that we want to bring to the table in everything we do. So it's been a long process together. We've had a lot of help from our business accelerator here in trying to identify this and sort of moving forward with, PR people, working out copy, working out name, logo, etc. And a lot of players have been involved. And it's been really exciting, actually, not without its difficulties, of course.
Yeah.
I mean, basically just finding something where you have a narrative that you actually buy yourself and that you think is going to be the right way to show people how you add value and why you want to add value.
I think this is something really important, and I'm going to highlight it a little bit different way. The way you just said it is in the process of Non-Pi Medical and what you've been building, there was a little bit of a issue with the way the product was perceived on the market. And so better aligning the product, the mission, and the impact with the company name, company toolkit in a way that says, when you hear this, you think this, right? I think that's a really big thing that many companies out there sometimes don't always get. You have a great product, a great idea, you name the company, you do all these things, but then you realize it's a great product for the market, but it doesn't always hit in the way the story needs to tell. So I love this idea of, we wanted to think of a name, imagery, all these things that better align our product to the impact that it makes on the market, which is what I heard you say there. And I think that's something that so many other entrepreneurs out in the world can learn from, that you and your team have been very upfront about. It's like, we have this great product, we built it, we tested it, we have traction, we have great clients, we have conversations going on around the world. we need to hone in on our story. We need to hone in on this. And you're putting steps in place to do that so that people have a better brand recognition of name, product, service, impact. And that, I think, is something that, and I go on this little diatribe because it's something, for my listeners out there, I've had the ability to work very closely with Simon, his team, on some of the stuff that they're doing on the back end. And I think this is something that becomes a great learning lesson for many, is that you have to be adaptable and you have to listen to the market and be okay with making changes and taking some big risks. And I think going through a rebrand is a big risk, and it's something that I'm excited about. I love the rebrand. I love the logo is clean. I love the motto. I love everything. I think everything just becomes much more. And me as a layperson, like I'm not in the science field, it becomes easier to understand and think about the impact. And so that's something that needed to happen, and it's being done. So I applaud that. And I really love what you've been able to do and how you've thought about the business and moving it forward.
Yeah. And I mean, the key word here is impact. You're actually right on the money there, because having a great product is awesome when you get to show it to people and they're impressed and they want it. And I mean, we have like a complete customer retention rate. So we have happy customers. We know that we're adding value. But the other part of the puzzle is the brand. You actually have to build that separately. It's just not enough to just have a good product, because then you're not going to have the same reach. And in the end, you're not going to have the same impact. So, I mean, this is what it boils down to for us. And I mean, it was sort of it was sort of an organic development as well, because our name didn't really portray what we wanted or what we did. But at the same time, we're all a bunch of people who are value driven in what we do. And I mean, the name Hero Imaging hints at the fact that there's a lot of heroes out there working with science. Basically, that was our starting point. And that's something we can relate to. And I mean, I've seen it up close. So I mean, I think it's very honest too. So I'm hoping that this is going to be a clean start to really brand that in a good way, because I think that's what's been missing. And I mean, we want to reach as wide an audience as possible. So I think this is a very important step on the way.
Yeah. And so I know that you're based out of northern Sweden, up in the Umeå region. You have clients, kind of all around Europe, as well as conversations and clients happening in the US. How have you gone about developing global business relationships? And do you feel that locationally you're at an advantage or disadvantage in your ability to be known?
It's kind of hard to give an exact answer there, because I honestly don't think it's a disadvantage being here. I mean, this is a university city, but we don't have the same competition for staff that you would have in one of the main capitals in Europe. But we do have a lot of competence just around us, especially in medical fields, computer sciences. There's a very vibrant life science scene here as well. So, I mean, that's definitely an advantage. We can actually find people here that we want to hire. And logistically speaking, I mean, we're in the software game. Being on site everywhere is not going to be key. And I mean, there's a difference everywhere. Eventually, we might have to open up offices in the US, because it's just such a big market. So it's probably we're probably gonna get to a point where it just makes sense. But I mean, we have customers in Japan too, and that's just very daunting. So I mean, we thought it just made sense to try to find a Japanese distributor that we know can really present our software the right way, and that's worked out very nicely thus far.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that, because, we talk about it all the time, and this is a conversation, I think, with the way global business can be done, and the fact that you do have an amazing technical university. The city of Umeå, the region, has a lot of amazing growth that's happening, especially in life sciences. It's a perfect place for you to be, headquartered and like tap into that ecosystem. And, I love New York, and a lot of companies want to come to New York first, but there's a lot of times when I meet a company, I think you should come to New York and develop relationships. Most companies, New York should not be your landing spot, right? Your landing spot might be Chicago, Illinois, Houston, Texas, Detroit, Minneapolis, like sometimes, Vegas, Nashville, like you have to think about where your clients are and setting up those different offices. And so I think being in Sweden, in this town, in this area, allows you to also reach Europe, Asia Pac, and the US market with, I'd say, some relative ease just by being in the middle time zone location. It's tough because you're probably up late, up early, taking calls from time to time with your partners and stuff around the world. But I always like to ask that question. Sometimes, people look at it differently, and I think it's a very big advantage for y'all and what you've been able to accomplish. So
yeah, but I think Sweden's
as we kind of get into,
actually.
Yeah. So to get into the product itself, you're going through rebrand, you're going through some new product innovation, new product developments. What's coming out? What's coming to the market here, and what can we look forward to with Hero Imaging and kind of? I don't want to say a new product. I want to say kind of version 2.0 as the product continues to develop. So what's your development plan and what's coming out here in 2022?
Basically, we're starting from scratch with our entire back end. Sorry. So for the user, this is going to be a full upgrade across the board. This is going to be some really cool stuff. One of the main things we wanted to do is let our user and the software define how it's using its hardware. Sorry. So basically, and our goal here is to make sure that you can work with AI in a very profound way, even if you don't have the machine learning skills yourself. But the point here is that you're supposed to be able to implement it in a good way for all types of image analysis, really. So we're redoing the entire back end, which is a massive project. It really is, but it's going to explode the number of features we have. So we're starting off with a very high functional software that we know our current users really appreciate, but amping it up a bit, basically, and trying to add as much intuitiveness as possible, just making sure that the user shouldn't need training in this to use it. If they just know the science they're doing, it should just be easy. It should be drag and drop. You should always know the next step. You should be able to do quality assurance easy, stuff like that. So we're on a phase now that we're ready to demo this in about a month. And we're just about to launch the brand as well this week. So it's really super exciting. And I think people are going to respond very well to the actual software update too.
Love that. I'd say for all the listeners out there, by the time you're hearing this, the rebrand will have been out and officially announced and done, heroimaging.com. And I love that you have a lot of clients, right? So you have a lot of customers globally that are using the product as is. You've done a lot of customer research, asked a lot of great questions to make version 2.0 even more intuitive. Do you, as with any product kind of upgrade implementation, do you foresee any major challenges with current customers using the product and kind of upgrading them? Is that going to be a big process? How do you foresee that kind of rolling out for them? Is it going to be easy and smooth, or you're already kind of thinking about how that's going to look?
I think we have a fairly good idea, actually. I mean, introducing this new software is going to basically mean it's going to be a bit bumpy. It is for some people. But what you have to know here is that we're trying to make sure that we keep the old software fully updated, functional, and something that we can support fully for at least 6 to 12 months. And this is just to make sure that people don't have to upgrade mid-project. Because the thing is, when we're replacing the backend, a lot of what you've done before that is not going to work in the new backend because you can do so much more. So it's built in a slightly different way too. as it's tensor based. So it's constructed in a different way. So some of the things that they have done before, they're going to have to start with their processes from scratch, which is not going to be, I mean, it's going to be slightly bumpy. It is, but at the same point, I think they're going to appreciate the new features so much that that's not really going to be a problem, but we still need to really think it through so that we don't create any problems for anyone. Just make sure that it's a smooth transition for everyone. And then it's going to be fine, I think.
Yeah. Good. I like that. I mean, sometimes you have to take a step back to take multiple steps forward. And so as long as you're communicating that to the customers, I think they're going to be excited by the new product and the expanded features and the intuitiveness of the product. And I love it. Hero Imaging, it's, your tagline is imaging analysis made easy. And for those out there, haven't talked a lot about it, but Hero Imaging is a graphical programming software that enables complex image analysis. And the idea behind this is that it's going to allow really smart people to focus on the science and make better decisions without having to spend all their time coding, as you mentioned earlier in the show, right? And so I'm excited that you have new product updates. I'm excited that you have a new version coming out that's going to help take your current clients and new clients to the next level. And I'm just excited about the official reveal of the new brand, the logo, the scheme, the software. It's really exciting. I think you and your founding team have a great story and a lot to bring to the medical community. So it's going to be exciting to see that. And I know that you're kind of unveiling all this as you roll out for a big event coming up. Estro, right? Tell me a little about the event and kind of how this is the kind of coming out party for Hero Imaging.
Yeah, sure thing. Estro's the event, and it's the biggest radiation oncology conference in Europe. So I think it's along the lines of 6,000 to 7,000 participants every year. And this is going to be the first time we show off the new software. So we're launching about a month ahead of the conference to be able to build some suspense and to be able to, we're going to drop off a few teasers along the way while we continue hashing out the software. But so it's actually going to be super excited. It's a big coming out party altogether. So I'm very excited to see what people say, how people respond to both the brand and the software itself, because this is, as far as exposure goes, this is going to be a big deal for us. I mean, we've grown organically through word of mouth mostly previously. So just meeting all of these people and just showing what we're about is going to be so much fun.
That's exciting. I love kind of the coming out party. And the event is in May, right? In Denmark, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. First week of May.
First week of May in Denmark. So if you're going to be at Estro 2022 in Denmark, for whatever reason, Bear Nation, go stop by their booth, go say hi to Simon, let him know that you heard about him on the Bear Necessities podcast and check out the new product while you're there. Simon, it's been a lot of fun catching up with you and talking a little bit about how you got to where you are and the origin stories and the new product and kind of the big step forward as you take it. So we're excited to follow along and see how that goes. As you may or may not know, having listened to the pod a little bit, I always like to ask a few closing questions. So the first one is, for anyone thinking about being an entrepreneur, right? You came from, deep background and you had a lot of different things happen to being an entrepreneur. What advice, anyone thinking about being an entrepreneur out there, what advice would you give them? Someone said, hey, Simon, I'm looking to be an entrepreneur, start my own business. What advice do you have for me?
There's a million things I could say here, actually. But first and foremost, you have to be a bit stubborn. A lot of people are going to have opinions. So you really need to know who to listen to. Get strong people around you, but make sure that you're not easily convinced. Like we talked about earlier, disagreeing is actually the most important tool you might have going forward. So I think that's always a big thing. And just make sure that you do something you really love. If you do that, everything else is going to come more natural.
Absolutely. So really, being stubborn a little bit, knowing knowing what you want to accomplish and finding people around you that are going to help support, but also challenge that to know, because there's everyone, as you know, and people listening to me know, everyone can give advice and everyone's an expert. And I always like to say, Zig Ziglar said, what is an expert? An X, someone who's former something. What is a spurt? A water spout. So it's somebody who just talks about stuff they did in the past, right? So while that's great, you also have to know who to listen to, which advice to take, which advice not to take. And that requires you to be a little bit stubborn and knowing your truth and knowing your strengths. So I love that. One of my favorite questions to always ask every founder, entrepreneur, what is your superpower?
Well, besides making beer disappear, I usually say that I'm very good at systematic thinking. I'm rarely the specialist in any context, but I do have a knack for piecing a lot of information together to find a way forward, I'd say.
Mm-hmm. I love that. I think that's really important, right? Well, yeah. Well, we're gonna put that one to the test when I come to Sweden. Hopefully, I'm trying to come out in September if I can make that work. So if that's the case, or when you come to New York, we'll have to put that superpower to the test.
Absolutely.
What is a resource, book, show, content that you would recommend right now for the listeners of Bear Nation?
Actually, one of the books I just read, I think it's slightly out of my comfort zone. It's a slightly biographical book by a Swedish man called Bear Necessities. He actually lived as a Buddhist tree monk for, I think, 18 to 20 years or something. And it's just, he adds a lot of perspective to most things in life. Everything you're going through, he adds a perspective and really makes you think. And it's at the same time, it's a very soothing book to read. As I said, it's just not along the lines of how I function, but I think anyone who, as me, enjoys sort of, I don't know, a busy schedule, things happening all the time.
Yeah.
I think that type of insights that you will get from meditating for 20 years straight, it's actually, it adds a perspective that makes you think.
And the book is called I May Be Wrong by Bjorn. I don't know how to say the last name. Nathiko Lindeblad is what you said, right? I may have butchered his last name, but as I may be wrong, if you put in Bjorn, you'll find it. Yeah. I love that. So Simon, as we close out and you have Estro coming up here in a couple months, how can Bear Nation find you? How can they connect with you? Where can they learn more about what you're building and doing moving forward?
Easiest thing is just to check out our website, heroimaging.com, or just email me at simon@heroimaging.com. That's the easiest way. I mean, we're going to show off what we're doing there. And I mean, we're also on social medias. We use LinkedIn, Twitter, where we try to, keep people updated with what we're doing. But that's going to be your first point of entry.
Awesome. Well, I'll make sure to have the website, your email, LinkedIn, and Twitter linked in the show notes. So if you're interested in learning more, click on those show notes. You'll be able to drive to the website and other links to connect. Feel free to reach out to Simon at any time. I know that he loves talking with great people. Simon, thank you again for taking time to be a part of Bear Nation. Excited to see the rebrand come out in full force, and excited for the Estro conference in Copenhagen or Denmark coming up here in May, and seeing the new product launch and seeing all the amazing content that I know you're going to plan to roll out. So thank you for being a part of Bear Nation, my friend.
Thank you for having me, Rob.
You bet. All right, Bear Nation, that is it for this episode. Until next time, stay well, rise up. Bear Nation, once again, thank you for tuning in and listening to the Bear Necessities podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, leave us a review. It really does help and means a lot to us, the show. And I want to thank our friends over at Fin. Fin is a social good platform that creates employee engagement and builds culture. It's our mission to support and give back to the communities that we serve around the world. And we do this by giving every guest on our show a $10 donation to the cause of their choosing using the Fin platform. Until next time, thank y'all, stay well, and rise up.